Welcome to our virtual celebration of the United Nations International Day of Persons with Disabilities. Bonjour à tous. Bienvenue à la célébration virtuelle de la Journée internationale des personnes handicapées de l'Organisation des Nations Unies. I'm Lucille Burlingett-Saumur, and I am the city's corporate accessibility specialist. And it's an absolute pleasure to be here celebrating with you today. Je m'appelle Lucille Burlingett-Saumur, et c'est un grand plaisir d'être ici avec vous.
I'm very happy to be here with
Before we get started, there are a few housekeeping items to address. Zoom is still new to a lot of us, and for those who rely on support, here's how you can access what you need. The event will be simultaneously translated into French. Alors, pour suivre en français, vous pouvez choisir l'interprétation dans les paramètres de la réunion, puis choisir français. Vous entendrez la traduction audio et devrez couper le son en anglais. Captioning in English is available by selecting the captioning button in the controls in Zoom. Et le sous-titrage en français est disponible par le biais du lien affiché dans le chat box.
In the chat box.
For those of you who require American Sign Language, you can pin the interpreter by clicking on the three dots in the upper right corner of the interpreter's video and selecting the pin icon. Et pour ceux qui ont besoin de la langue des signes québécoise, vous pouvez épingler la vidéo,
video of the interpreter.
La vidéo pour choisir l'interprétation dans les paramètres de la réunion et choisir français. Vous entendrez la traduction audio et vous allez couper le son en anglais.
You will hear the sound
My
in
apologies.
English.
We have quite an hour for you today. And before we get started, I'd like to recognize that Ottawa and across the province, our work takes place on traditional Indigenous territories. Avant de commencer, j'aimerais reconnaître qu'Ottawa et dans toute la province, nous travaillons sur les territoires indigènes traditionnels. Ottawa is located on the unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. We extend our respect to all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people for their valuable past and present contributions to this land. Research shows that Indigenous people are disproportionately likely to experience disability in comparison to the general population. In our work to increase accessibility for all, may we be mindful of our Indigenous peoples and work to build relationships to ensure the full inclusion of Indigenous peoples with disabilities. I'd like to welcome a few dignitaries to the event. We'll be hearing from each of them today. Mayor Watson, the Honourable Carla Qualtrough, Minister of Employment, Workforce Development and Disability Inclusion by video, Councillor Luloff, Liaison of the Accessibility Advisory Committee, Phillip Turcotte, Chair of the City's Accessibility Advisory Committee, Marnie Peters, an expert in universal design and accessibility, Kathleen Forestell from CNIB, Wayne Antle from the Alliance for Equality of Blind Canadians, and Kim Kilpatrick from the Canadian Council for the Blind. I would also like to thank the numerous members of Council, members of the senior leadership team, and the members of the Accessibility Advisory Committee who have joined us today. Conseiller Fleury, Conseiller Cloutier, Conseiller Brockington, Councillor Kavanagh, Councillor Tierney, and Councillor El-Shantiri. AAC members who are present, Melanie Benard, Dawn Patterson, Anna Maria Cruz Valdemara, Jenny St. Martin, and from our leadership team, the City Clerk, Rick O'Connor, Dan Chenier, General Manager of Recreation, Culture and Facilities, Alexandra Yarrow, representing the Ottawa Public Library Board, and Tyler Cox, the Manager of Legislative Services. To officially begin the event, I'd like to invite Mayor Jim Watson to say a few words. J'aimerais inviter le maire Jim Watson à prononcer quelques mots.
Well, thank you very much, Lucille, and good afternoon, everyone. Bon après-midi tout le monde. I want to welcome everyone and thank you for being with us today to celebrate the annual International Day of Persons with Disabilities proclaimed by the United Nations in 1992. This day, as you know, aims to promote the rights and well-being of persons with disabilities in all spheres of society and development, and to increase awareness of the situation of persons with disabilities in every aspect of political, social, economic, and cultural life. The theme for our event is Not All Disabilities Are Visible. It encourages us to seek out the experience of persons with visible and invisible disabilities to inform our work and celebrate their valuable contributions. COVID-19 has been especially difficult for our disabled community. The COVID-19 est particulièrement éprouvant pour la communauté de personnes handicapées. As we emerge from this global pandemic, we need to consider the United Nations theme for International Day of Persons with Disabilities, which is building a disability inclusive, accessible, and sustainable post-COVID-19 environment. Both these themes align with the Government of Canada's accessibility strategy, Nothing About Us Without Us, adopted during the enactment of the Accessible Canada Act in 2019, emphasizing that disability is an integral part of Canada's diversity. That's why in 2019, when building our new 2020-2025 Municipal Accessibility Plan, the city conducted a comprehensive public engagement process on the accessibility of city programs, services, and facilities. More than 200 residents from diverse communities participated in the consultations through a variety of outreach methods, including a survey conducted online or by phone, as well as community toolkit for community groups to get together and provide feedback. This comprehensive plan, approved by Council on November 25th, is already making a difference. Based on feedback received during the consultations this past month, we announced that Canada Video Relay Services, VRS, is now available for residents wishing to use their service to access our general phone line. Canada VRS is a service that allows Canadians who are deaf, hard of hearing, or speech impaired to connect a sign language interpreter who provides real-time interpretation for telephone calls to the city. This allows callers to express themselves in their first language, ASL, or Langue des Signes Québécois, when asking questions or making
we have American Sign Language and
Another
Quebec
way the
Sign
city
Language.
is receiving feedback is through the engagement of the Accessibility Advisory Committee. Pour prendre connaissance des commentaires qui lui sont destinés, la ville fait aussi appel au comité consultatif sur l'accessibilité. Each year, these volunteers, and I stress they're volunteers, very dedicated volunteers, share their wealth of knowledge and experience with departments and with council to ensure accessibility is incorporated into city projects and services. As part of today's agenda, I'm happy to see that 2 AAC members will be speaking about their experiences. I thank them and all of the volunteers of the AAC for the great work that they do advising council, and to thank Matt Luloff, who is our council liaison to the committee. This committee is a very busy and valuable resource to the city, and their work has a direct impact on the well-being and inclusion of all persons in Ottawa. So today, please join me congratulating and acknowledging everyone who works tirelessly to make the City of Ottawa more accessible and inclusive to all. A big thank you to all, and grand merci à vous tous. I also wanted to mention that earlier today, Councillor Fleury, our sports commissioner, and I received some great news for our city that Ottawa will be hosting the 2026 IWBF Wheelchair Basketball World Championships. The Wheelchair Basketball World Championships is an incredible sporting event and an inspiring celebration of sport and inclusivity that unites people. This is a testament to the leadership our city is showing with regards to accessibility and creating a welcoming and inclusive city for all. We are honored to have been selected the host city for this incredible event, and we are excited to welcome the world right here in 2026. The official announcement for this event can be viewed on the Wheelchair Basketball Canada Facebook page. I'd now like to, I have the proclamation here, I'll just hold it up, present this proclamation proclaiming December 3rd, International Day of Persons with Disabilities, to Phillip B. Turcotte, Chair of the Accessibility Advisory Committee. And thank you all for the work that you do day in and out to make our city more accessible for all. And in closing, I'd like to acknowledge that COVID-19 has brought on unique challenges for persons with disabilities. To ensure emergency information accessible for all, we've been providing American Sign Language and Langue des Signes Québécois during all our media availabilities. We've also developed information for people with disabilities on the Ottawa Public Health website. In addition, our Human Needs Task Force is involved in many projects that support persons with disabilities. As the COVID-19 pandemic continues to evolve, we'll continue to look for ways to support persons with disabilities in our communities. My sincere thanks to all. Merci beaucoup. And special thanks, of course, to our volunteers, members of the community, and my colleagues from City Council who have shown their interest by being with us today. Thank you. Merci.
Thank you.
We're very excited about the 2026 World Wheelchair Basketball Championship. This is great news. At this point, I would like to present a video message from the Honourable Carla Qualtrough, Minister of Employment, Workforce Development and Disability Inclusion. J'aimerais maintenant présenter un message vidéo de l'Honorable Carla Qualtrough, ministre de l'Emploi, du Développement de la main-d'œuvre et de l'inclusion des personnes handicapées.
This year has been one like no other. The COVID-19 pandemic has challenged us all in so many ways. It's affected the lives of all Canadians, and it has disproportionately affected the lives of persons with disabilities. Yet, we remain resilient. This year, the UN theme for the International Day of Persons with Disabilities, Building Back Better toward a disability-inclusive, accessible, and sustainable post-COVID-19 world, is at the very heart of our commitment to building a more disability-inclusive Canada. We're building on the proactive, disability-inclusive approach that we've used to respond to this pandemic. The health, well-being, and economic security of Canadians with disabilities have been top of mind every step of the way. The COVID-19 Disability Advisory Group was there to give advice on the lived experiences of persons with disabilities. Their input helped shape policies and support measures, while also ensuring that all Canadians, especially Canadians with disabilities, were included. Whether it be through the one-time payment to persons with disabilities, investments to increase job opportunity for persons with disabilities, a commitment to a disability inclusion plan, or income support for students with disabilities, our government has shown that it is unwavering in its support for persons with disabilities during and beyond this crisis. As we continue our work together, I want to assure you that you are part of the plan. Whether it's our plan to respond to the next wave of COVID-19, our plan to roll out a vaccine when it becomes available, or our plan to rebuild our economy stronger than it has ever been before. Persons with disabilities are at the heart of our decision-making. We can only build back better if we build back together. As you celebrate International Day of Persons with Disabilities, let's celebrate resiliency, creativity, and hope for a stronger future. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this video. It is always great to have a federal perspective. As Mayor Watson said earlier, the theme for the event is Not All Disabilities Are Visible. And it encourages us to seek out the experiences of persons with visible and invisible disabilities to inform our work and celebrate their valuable contributions. I would now like to invite Councillor Luloff to say a few words about the work that he does with the Accessibility Advisory and the contribution of those members. Councillor Luloff.
Thank you very much, Lucille, and good afternoon, everyone. Bon après-midi, tout le monde. Merci de vous joindre.
Thank you for being with us today for this important celebration.
As the Council Liaison for the Accessibility Advisory Committee, I have the honor to work closely with this group and to promote their tireless efforts with my council colleagues and city staff. Our Accessibility Advisory Committee includes 8 members and 3 reserve members, many of whom are with us today, and it's so nice to see you all. J'aimerais remercier chacun.
I'd like to thank all of these volunteers for their time, their dedication, and their commitment to increasing accessibility at the City of Ottawa.
Phillip Turcotte is our committee chair, and a wonderful one at that. Melanie Bernard is our committee vice chair. Joanne Bryan, Anna Maria Cruz Valderrara, Kathleen Forestell, Murray Gallant, Roy Haynes, Vanya Karam, Don Patterson, Jenny St. Martin, Brian Wade, and our reserve members, Joël Dazy, Dr. Holly Ellingwood, and Tammy Kelly, just giving our interpreters an opportunity to spell those out. The committee meets at least 5 times per year, with other special meetings as required. And the group consults on projects required under the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act, and many more, where the city benefits from an accessibility lens. In addition to their meetings, the group provides feedback by email, and many members participate in working groups or other subcommittees. Entre tous ces engagements, il est difficile d'estimer le temps.
Of all these commitments, it's difficult to estimate how much time these members give, but it's fair to say that they're very generous with their time, and we are so grateful for their expertise.
In 2019, this committee provided feedback on over 20 citywide topics. Additionally, they attended consultations and provided feedback on another 20 items. This includes projects that are close to my heart, like the new Central Library, the Transportation Master Plan, the new City of Ottawa Municipal Accessibility Plan, and many more. The 2020 to 2024 City of Ottawa Municipal Accessibility Plan highlights that engagement with persons with disabilities is critical in the years to come. The work of this committee demonstrates that we have more inclusive outcomes when we consult with the community. And I would like to thank them once again for sharing their knowledge with us. I look forward to continuing to work with you in the years to come as we continue to expand the inclusion of persons with disabilities in our planning and decision-making. Je sais que notre comité et mes collègues m'ont déjà entendu dire cela.
I know that my colleagues have already heard me say this, but it's important to repeat it here today, I think. The public space is not really public if it's not accessible to all.
Is not truly public unless it's accessible to all. Thank you. Merci.
Merci, conseiller Luloff, pour ce message d'appréciation.
Thank you,
I would
Councillor
now like
Luloff,
to invite
for your
Phillip
message.
Turcotte, the chair of the Accessibility Advisory Committee, to highlight some of the committee's work. J'aimerais inviter Phillip Turcotte, président de notre comité consultatif sur
I'd like to ask Philippe
l'accessibilité.
Turcotte, the chair of the advisory committee, to highlight some of the committee's work.
Pleasure to be here with everyone today. So Mr. Mayor, councillors, distinguished guests, fellow Ottawans with disabilities, happy International Day of Persons with Disabilities. I would like to start with my own acknowledgement that I'm speaking to you from the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people, whose presence on these lands extend to time immemorial. Today is an important reminder for us to connect with our Indigenous neighbors and to learn more about Indigenous understandings of disability. This is also a time of public health emergency. So I want to first express my heartfelt thanks to those serving and working on our front lines, our first responders, our medical professionals, our grocery store employees, our delivery drivers, and others who put their health at risk every day to make sure that we have the essential services we need. This makes a big difference for disabled persons in Ottawa. I thank you for your service. So a bit about me. So my name is Phil. I'm a resident of Ottawa-Vanier. I'm a proud Ottawan. I'm a lawyer, a federal public servant, I'm a tea geek, and most importantly for today, I am a proud queer man living with both visible and invisible disabilities. I've had the privilege of serving on our city's Accessibility Advisory Committee since 2013, and I have the honor also of serving as its chair for its current term of 2018 to 2022. So Councillor Luloff spoke a bit about what the Accessibility Advisory Committee does, but I just wanted to expand on that a little bit. So our committee has a very interesting mandate. As Councillor Luloff said, we provide advice to City Council and to staff on matters related to accessibility for persons with disabilities and for seniors in Ottawa. Out of all of our city's advisory committees, ours is the only one whose existence is required by legislation. The Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act, the AODA for short, requires our city to create this committee and to consult with it to make sure that the city is meeting the requirements of the provincial law. In addition to that requirement, City Council has also asked us to work on issues of accessibility more broadly, including accessibility matters for seniors. And that's a role that we truly welcome and that we feel is essential to our role. We, as the councillor said, we meet at least 4 times a year at meetings that are open to the public. All of you are welcome to attend. And we also provide a lot of written advice behind the scenes as well. So as I mentioned, the current Accessibility Advisory Committee started its work in 2018, and we will go on continuing our work until 2022. I'm proud to serve with so many wonderful people who are dedicated to ensuring that Ottawa gets accessibility right, that our city is accessible, inclusive, and that it welcomes the diversity that disability brings to our communities. Our committee truly reflects a diversity of experiences and expertise on accessibility and disability matters. Since the beginning of our term, our committee has advised city staff and councillors on likely hundreds of accessibility questions, ranging from accessibility of public parks and public places in a specific ward, to design of public streets, accessible transportation, and beyond. I'd like to share with you a few examples from work that we've done this year. Staff reports. So we've worked hard to ensure that city staff provide more clarity and information when they speak about accessibility impacts in the reports they prepare for committees on various projects and initiatives. These accessibility statements in staff reports are important to transparency and for Ottawans to better understand how accessibility is being considered in everything the city does. E-scooters. So as some of you likely saw, over the summer, our city piloted a project that allowed kick e-scooters to be used in some of our areas in the city. We provided detailed advice on this pilot project, including on how it can be designed to make sure that it doesn't create any accessibility barriers. We had been concerned about the possibility of creating barriers through these kick e-scooters, and we've worked to make sure that enforcement is being done proactively. We will be looking forward to updates on this pilot project and to continue working on this important issue. Multi-use pathways. We passed a motion recommending that the design and construction of multi-use pathways in our city and other transportation projects prioritize the safety and accessibility needs of seniors and persons with disabilities. Importantly, we clarified that the safety and accessibility needs of seniors and disabled persons has to prevail over the needs of other users of multi-use pathways. Accessible parking spaces. In 2018, our committee passed an important motion on the availability of accessible parking spaces in our city, including all of the different kinds of parking spaces that can be used by those who have an accessible parking permit. We called on the city to properly analyze how these spaces are being used by the disabled community and to ensure that no spaces are lost through the construction or other developments of our streets. We stressed that for many people with disabilities, traveling by vehicle is the only accessible way to travel, and that our accessible parking spaces are essential to us and will continue to be so for years to come. We continue to carefully monitor our accessible parking spaces this year, and this is a project that's really close to our hearts. And finally, the last project I'd like to mention, Councillor Luloff alluded to it, the new Ottawa Public Library facility. This is a really interesting project, and it's a perfect example of how much we can innovate when we include disabled voices from the very beginning. Our committee has provided advice many times to staff and to the architects working on this project. They have been so open to all of our comments, and we really do commend them for that. This new facility will be an innovation in barrier-free and disability-inclusive design. It is going to be made a better space because it is shaped by the disabled lives and experiences of people with disabilities in our city. This shows how much disability communities have to contribute to the architecture and design of our public spaces. The work our committee does is so important, and it's really a privilege to serve on the committee. I would encourage anyone with an interest in disability inclusion to apply to be on the committee the next time applications are open. I also can't talk about our committee without saying a few thank yous. First, I want to thank our Councillor Liaison, Councillor Luloff, for being an incredible champion for our committee among his councillor colleagues. I also want to thank the folks at the Accessibility Office and the Office of the City Clerk for being a constant resource and support to us. And I want to say a special thank you to Carla, our committee coordinator, without whom the work of our committee would simply not be possible. In closing, on this International Day, I encourage those of you who are currently without disabilities to reach out to your disabled neighbors, learn about our communities and the richnesses that they provide, and most importantly, learn how you can be a better ally and better remove barriers for full inclusion in our city. To those of you who are part of our city's wonderful disability communities, celebrate today. Celebrate the disability that you bring into the world, celebrate the contributions you make, and most importantly, be proud of who you are. Happy International Day of Persons with Disabilities. Merci beaucoup.
Merci Philippe, nous apprécions
Thank you
beaucoup
very
votre
much,
travail
Philip.
dévoué au sein de notre
We really
comité
appreciate your
consultatif.
devoted work on our advisory committee.
I would like now to turn things over to Marnie Peters to talk about her work with the City of Ottawa as a consultant.
Thanks very much, Lucille. My name is Marnie Peters. I'm very happy to be with everybody today on this International Day of Persons with Disabilities. I myself am a person with a disability, and I've been working as an accessibility consultant for over 20 years now. And I just want to give you a brief presentation on city building, engaging people with disabilities in the design process. I can say that I have been fortunate enough to have worked on many of the largest projects that have been undertaken within the City of Ottawa. And I think I'll just ask you to move the slide ahead one. Thank you. So I began my career working on the Ottawa Airport and have since worked on such wonderful projects as the Ottawa Convention Centre, the Phase 1 of Ottawa LRT, the new Ottawa Art Gallery, Lansdowne Park redevelopment. And I would say that my current project with this city relates to cycling facilities and public rights of way. And I think I would have to say that so far this has been among one of the most challenging projects that I have worked on. And perhaps the project where people with a full range of disabilities and their engagement in the project have been the most interesting, and I think will help make the outcome of this project the best that it can be. I know I was really happy to listen to Philip and him talking about multi-use pathways, because right now that's one of the biggest challenges in relation to cycling facilities and cycling infrastructure, and how do we ensure the safety of seniors and people with disabilities and other vulnerable populations. Next slide, please. So this is an example of engaging a broad range of users within the design process. This is actually the Ottawa Airport, and this was our post-occupancy assessment. So wheelchair users, you know, everybody thinks disability right away. They think wheelchair user, or they think of somebody with vision loss who's using a guide dog. But much less visible, as Mayor Jim Watson had mentioned, are people who are deaf and hard of hearing, people with mental health issues, people with cognitive impairments. And so we need to consider how all these different users approach and use and access a space. And so while I bring a certain design expertise and codes and standards expertise, it's really important to get the perspective of other users whose needs might not yet be addressed in codes and standards. Next slide, please. When we talk about the evolution of building codes, and I think this is just a really quick and important lesson for people who are less familiar with accessibility and disability. Often the terms barrier-free design, accessible design, universal design, they're all thrown around as if they all have the same meaning. But they don't. This is the evolution of where we have come in design and how we address the needs of all users, including people with disabilities. So when we talk about barrier-free design, it comes from the 70s, and it often was the way that we addressed taking an existing environment and finding a way to make it accessible for a specific user group. And typically it was people with mobility disabilities. So it was like adding a ramp onto the back of a building. The next phase is accessible design. And it isn't quite universal design. Accessible design is still really thinking about accessibility from the disability perspective. And it's thinking about how do we address the needs of mobility users? And how do we address the needs of people who are blind or have vision loss? How do we address the needs of people who are deaf and hard of hearing? So it's really making sure that we've addressed disability groups. The next step in this evolution is universal design, and it's really thinking about how do we design an environment that's usable by everybody. And it's really still thinking about, though, ensuring that we're looking at it from addressing issues as opposed to the final step, which is universal accessibility, which isn't about addressing issues, but it's really about implementing good design. So it's design that accommodates families and children and seniors, and maybe all at the same time, whether they're walking in a park or going into a building. So universal accessibility is really the goal that we keep working towards and striving towards, to ensure that no matter what it is that we build or the services that are provided, everybody can use them in the same manner. They're able to not require any special treatment or anything different. So I was really happy to hear the mayor say that people who are deaf and hard of hearing can now call the city's line and use the Canada Virtual Relay Service. So no more trying to figure out if anybody knows how to use the TTY. People can communicate in the language of their choice. So I was really happy to hear that. And so, over my 20 years, I've been able to be part of this evolution and how we not only design, but engage people with a full range of disabilities. Next slide, please. So, these are just a few examples of things that we consider, but we have to consider them from the user perspective of all users. And so, for example, slopes and curbs, they don't just impact people with mobility disabilities, but somebody with an invisible disability, like maybe post-concussion syndrome, and now they have problems with depth perception. So it's addressing visible and invisible disabilities. The same when we talk about, for example, impacts of lighting and illumination. So for people with low vision, it's harder to read and it's harder to wayfind. But a lot of people don't also realize that lighting and illumination are really important for people who are deaf and hard of hearing and who rely on sign language. You need to have enough light to be able to see what the sign language interpreter is saying and not have them backlit so that they just appear as a shadow. When we talk about who benefits most from accessible signage, is it people with vision loss or people with hearing loss? So all aspects of accessibility benefit everyone. We often think about accessibility features only being for people with disabilities, but really they're for people perhaps with invisible disabilities. But we also have to realize that whenever we create an environment that is accessible for vulnerable users, such as people with disabilities, it just makes it a better overall environment for everyone. A couple more examples of things that we consider are things like the newest phase in great thing in design, which is fully glazed walls, partitions, glass walls that we see in meeting rooms, and the challenges that they cause for people with cognitive impairments, people who are neurodiverse, so people on the autism spectrum or ADHD. And so glazing, first of all, is hard for people to perceive sometimes, but also it's a very reflective material. So if you have trouble concentrating, a room that's all glass just makes your environment more challenging. And so it's really about making sure that when we're looking at design, that we're not only considering all the different users, but consulting with them about what are the challenges that you experience every day. And next slide, please. And so I think I mentioned earlier about the design of cycling facilities. And so my most recent experience consulting on the range of users and involving people with a range of different disabilities relates to cycling facilities and finding out what are some of the particular challenges that people with a range of disabilities are currently experiencing as the city is implementing cycling facilities, not only in new areas, but in existing areas, and how do we make cycling facilities fit into a space that they weren't designed for previously. And so this was actually on Monday, we were walking around in the rain, and we received some amazing feedback that will now help drive sort of the project forward and ensuring that we address all those vulnerable users. I'm happy to say that I've worked closely with the city's Accessibility Advisory Committee on a number of projects. I've had the opportunity to present to them. And on many of my projects, I've also been able to receive their feedback and find hopefully ways to address many of their concerns. And so I commend the city for taking steps every year to improve accessibility within the city of Ottawa. As an accessibility consultant who works with many different projects, teams, and designers, I think one of the greatest things that I always tell them is, as the accessibility consultant, accessibility is not my job. It's everybody's job, and everybody has a role to play to ensuring our community is as accessible as possible for everyone. So thank you for having me here today, and I wish everybody a great day on this International Day of Persons with Disabilities.
Marnie, thank you so much for that wonderful presentation and for all your work with the city. We have one more presentation from Kathleen Forestell, Wayne Antle, and Kim Kilpatrick.
Hi, everyone. I had to get myself unmuted and on video. The joys of technology. Mr. Mayor, members of council, and residents of the City of Ottawa, thank you so much for coming together today to celebrate the International Day of Persons with Disabilities. And thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Kathleen Forestell, and I am the lead for advocacy and community outreach for CNIB, the Canadian National Institute for the Blind, specifically for the Ontario East region. I also have the immense privilege of being a member of the city's Accessibility Advisory Committee. I identify as a person with a disability. I am legally blind, and I navigate the world with the help of my wonderful guide dog. Fun fact, I actually got to work with Marnie on Monday looking at the cycling infrastructure. And if you saw a guide dog with a pink coat on in the photos on her presentation, that was my wonderful guide dog, Lily. So over the last few years in my role with CNIB, I've enjoyed working closely with the City of Ottawa on accessibility issues faced by residents who are blind or partially sighted. I've had the pleasure of working with Megan Richards at the Accessibility Office, Tom Crowley with Transportation Services, staff at OC Transpo, and so many more. Megan, Tom, and the accessibility team are not only responsive to any issues I raise, but they are very proactive about reaching out to community stakeholders like myself, Kim Kilpatrick with CCB, and Wayne Antle with AEVC. Kim, Wayne, and myself work closely together to advocate for the needs of Ottawa residents who are blind. And well, I should speak for myself. I am so appreciative that the City of Ottawa continues to regularly engage with us. I've had many great opportunities to engage with city staff. A few years ago, I had the opportunity to present to heavy construction professionals about the importance of accessibility in construction sites. In addition to this, I was able to actually visit a construction site, an active construction site, to point out features that could improve safety and access for people who are blind or partially sighted. I actually think Kim was with me for that, and Wayne may have been as well. So we do have the opportunity to work together on many of these things. Another opportunity I had was before the LRT opened. I, along with other stakeholders, had the opportunity to visit LRT stations to preview some of the accessibility features like the tactile wayfinding and braille signage. I've also had city staff reach out to collect feedback about cycling and intersection designs, like I mentioned, working with Marnie on Monday. And one of the most recent opportunities was I was able to facilitate a focus group for residents who are blind or partially sighted to provide the city with feedback about the e-scooter pilot project. The reality is that the City of Ottawa is not perfectly accessible, but nowhere is. That being said, the city has made great strides towards being more accessible, and we have city staff who are truly dedicated to making the city more inclusive for everyone. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to be here with you today, and I look forward to continuing to work with the city to break down barriers and work towards a city that is inclusive of everyone.
Hello, my name is Kim Kilpatrick, and I work for the Canadian Council of the Blind, CCB. I run a program teaching blind people technology, but I also do a lot of advocacy, especially local advocacy. And I've really loved working with the city over the last several years. One of the projects that I really loved working on was the implementation of the exterior bus announcements. We had a small group of diverse users to work on that, and it was an example of working together all through the process to make sure that the bus announcements were done correctly in a way that everyone could hear them and in the right manner. And I really appreciated the support of the city in that project. Another very interesting thing that I did with the city was I was invited to participate in an emergency exercise when the LRT was just being developed. And although they had many actors participating in those, they'd never had someone with an actual disability portraying themselves in this exercise. It was very useful for the first responders to understand what I would need. And I was very clear to them when they didn't tell me who they were, that they needed to say they were a fireman, policeman, and how they could guide me out. And I understood how professional they were and how kind they were and how good they were at that. I also have helped the city working on the municipal voting machines. I was very excited to help with that. Also to help with some web testing from time to time. And as Kathleen mentioned, to help construction workers understand the special needs of people who are blind and have low vision when navigating construction sites. And I still treasure the hard hat they gave me as a gift when they first gave me a pen, and I said, oh, I'd like a hard hat. They brought it to my house the next day. I think that one of the tricky things now is the e-scooter project, and I really commend Kathleen for hosting the meeting, and we were very concerned about that and still remain to be concerned about that. And over the past several months, we've been concerned about COVID-19 and how we can get access to testing if we need that. For example, people who are blind like me don't drive and couldn't get access easily to the testing site. And whenever I contacted Megan at the accessibility office, she was quick to give us answers as to how we could address some of these concerns that the community has. I'd really love to thank Lucille and Megan and Tom Crowley and everyone at the city who are always open to us. And even though they can't always give us the answers they need, they listen and they try to give us answers in the best way that they can. And I really look forward to working more closely with the city in future. And I wish everybody a very happy and safe International Day of Persons with Disabilities.
Hi, everyone. My name is Wayne Antle, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to say a few words today. I am a totally blind resident of Ottawa, and I lead the Ottawa-Gatineau chapter of the Alliance for Equality of Blind Canadians, AEBC. The AEBC is a national charitable volunteer-led organization comprised of blind, deafblind, and partially sighted Canadians. And our organization is committed to advocating for the full participation of our community in all aspects of society. We advocate to ensure that blind, partially sighted, and deafblind Canadians have access to the same benefits and opportunities that are available to everybody. On a local level, our local chapter has been was formed about 5 or 6 years ago, and we focus on local issues. And it's really the municipal issues that seem to touch our lives most directly. And since our inception, we've worked closely with the city. We've organized, I think, 3 town halls early on during the implementation or the start of the major transit changes that were necessitated by the introduction of LRT. And we continue to engage closely with the city and together with Kim and Kathleen. I think we have developed a really good collaborative relationship with the city. You know, on a number of issues, and these would include, of course, transit, pedestrian safety, infrastructure projects. And, you know, while we won't always agree, I really feel that the people that I've dealt with in the city really listen. And there is a real commitment to eliminating barriers and working with our community to find solutions. So I want to thank the city for that, and you know, look forward to continued collaboration as we move forward. Because really, any community or organization that is fully inclusive is more innovative, is more prosperous, and I think ultimately is more caring. And I think that's the type of community we all want to live in. So I'd like to wish everybody a great International Day for Persons with Disabilities. And let's hope that next year we can have this conference in person again. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your presentation, Kathleen, Wayne, and Kim. We always learn a lot from you when we partner with you, and we want to thank you for all the time that you provide us with here at the city. So thank you very much. This has been an informative afternoon, and it's been wonderful to hear from people with disabilities that the city is already engaging. Their contribution is extremely important to us. And as we continue this trend, I want to encourage everyone else to get involved as well. So avant de mettre fin à la rencontre, j'encourage tout le monde à participer avec nous. Before we end today, I'd like to encourage everyone to get involved. I would like to invite Megan Richards, Accessibility Initiatives Coordinator, to share all the different ways that residents can engage with us here at the city. Megan?
Thanks, Lucille. The city benefits in so many ways from our engagement with residents on accessibility-related matters. It allows us to make positive changes towards inclusion and focuses our efforts on projects and initiatives in the years to come. Your feedback often contributes positively for many others as well. Residents and visitors are invited to provide disability-related feedback on the accessibility of goods, services, and facilities that you receive or use at the City of Ottawa. We welcome your feedback and service inquiries either by calling 311 or 613-580-2400 and speaking with a 311 agent, online at our ottawa.ca/accessibility website, through our email accessibilityoffice@ottawa.ca, or through your city councillor. The Accessibility Office puts out a monthly newsletter called Accessibility Spotlight, and this includes news and initiatives related to accessibility at the city. In the last year, we included articles on things like beach wheelchairs, consultations related to accessibility or having an impact on persons with disabilities, information related to accessibility during COVID-19, snow removal, and much, much more. To register for our Accessibility Spotlight, you can visit ottawa.ca/accessibility. Another way the city is engaging with the public is through our engage.ottawa.ca website. You'll find information on this website for many different consultations across the city. We were recently consulting on our city budget. You'll see ongoing engagement related to COVID-19 with Ottawa Public Health and many other opportunities. We're always looking to engage with more organizations run by and supporting persons with disabilities in Ottawa. To better include the perspectives and experiences of persons with disabilities in our planning and design, it's very important for us to have strong relationships with community organizations. As part of our new City of Ottawa Municipal Accessibility Plan, we're also looking to connect with diverse groups of persons with disabilities in the coming years. We encourage organizations to reach out to us by emailing accessibilityoffice@ottawa.ca, and we really look forward to working with you in the future. As we mentioned, members of the public are invited and encouraged to apply to join the city's Accessibility Advisory Committee. Recruitment for advisory committees is done after each municipal election. Our next one will happen again in 2022. Members of the public are also invited to register to make a presentation on an agenda item at committee meetings. And you can find more information on the Accessibility Advisory Committee on ottawa.ca. Finally, again, we wanted to highlight a new way to engage with the city using the Canada Video Relay Service, or VRS. 311 agents are now able to receive calls through VRS by calling 613-580-2400. This new service allows residents to ask questions and give feedback in either American Sign Language or langue de signes Québécois. Regardless of how you reach out on accessibility-related matters, we certainly look forward to hearing from you and working together to build a more inclusive city in the years to come.
Thank you, Megan. I hope by sharing this information, more people will choose to share their knowledge and experience with the city in one way or another. We love to hear from you, whether you have advice, concerns, or ideas. Please reach out. Vos commentaires sont toujours les
Your
bienvenus.
comments are always
Que vous ayez
welcome,
des conseils,
be
des
they advice,
préoccupations ou des
concerns,
idées,
or
n'hésitez pas de
ideas.
nous contacter.
Please don't hesitate to
Your
reach out
feedback
to
helps
us.
inform our decisions, adapt our policies, and identify barriers. Vos suggestions aident à orienter nos décisions et à adapter nos politiques pour le mieux.
Comments and suggestions help us to
Together,
adapt our
we
policies
can work
to your
towards
needs.
making Ottawa an inclusive city for all. Ensemble, nous pouvons travailler à faire d'Ottawa
Together,
une
we
ville
can make
inclusive
Ottawa an
pour
inclusive
tous.
city for all.
Merci beaucoup. Je vous souhaite un excellent
Thank you to all of
après-midi et
you.
une
Please
saison de
enjoy the rest
fête
of your
en toute
afternoon
sécurité.
and happy Christmas.
Thank you and have a wonderful afternoon and a safe holiday season. Thank you.